Okay, we're getting ready to set eggs into a multi-stage incubator. One of the first things we need to do is we need to get eggs brought in here. But before we do that, we need to open up our incubator door. We got to remove the threshold, and once we open up the door, actually we need to turn the fans off, and then we can pull that threshold out so that we can then roll that rack of eggs into the proper position. So we're going to open up the door. We're going to turn our fans off, and the reason we need to turn the fans off is otherwise it's sucking in a bunch of cold air and it's going to really disturb the airflow within the machine. So we're turning the fans off. It's a lot less disruptive that way for the developing embryos within that incubator. So the next step is I'm going to remove this threshold, and then what we'll do is we will then pick up and bring eggs into here and start rolling eggs into the machine. We now move a rack or a buggy from the egg room. It is now in the incubator hallway on the entrance end. The rack, we've got a front and a back end of the rack. This is actually the back end of the rack. The back end of this rack must be facing the exterior wall. So what we're going to need to do is rotate this rack 180 degrees so that we're in the right position. We've repositioned this rack to make sure that the back end of the rack is facing the exterior wall of the incubator. The rack is now positioned properly. We're getting ready to push it into the incubator, move it into position 1 of the incubator. But before we do that, there's an important step that we need to take care of, is we need to make sure that all these racks are pushed in properly, because if they're not, when the eggs start turning, we can end up with some broken eggs. So we need to make sure that these eggs are all pushed in properly. And as you can see, there's a few of them that needed some adjustment. And that's just because of handling, from transport, from traying eggs, placing eggs on the racks. If they're not pushed in properly, we can again have an issue. So this is a critical step before you place these eggs in the machine, because once they're in there, it's going to be much more difficult to reposition these egg flats. We got this rack positioned so that it's ready to go into the incubator. The next step is actually physically pushing it in. It's more than one person can do, so it typically takes 2 people to get this pushed into the correct position. So this is what we're going to do now, is we're going to get this rack pushed into the first position, and once we get there, I'll explain a little bit more. Okay. The rack in position 1 of the incubator on the left-hand side. Now that it's in the correct position, we need to make sure of a couple things. First, we need to make sure our seals were in correctly. We're not too far in, nor is the rack out too far. And you can tell by the seals. We also need to make sure that our bottom seals are secure as well, and along the side. Typically, you should be pretty flush with your frame, the door frame or the framework of the equipment. This rack should come almost flush to that. Okay. Now, in both the left and the right hand side, we're getting ready to complete the process. We need to put our threshold in, turn the fans on, and then close our door, and then we're going to be complete. The other thing that we need to make sure when we turn our fans on is that they're rotating in the counterclockwise position as we're closing that door. I like to do that. So I'm going to throw the threshold in there and we'll get going. Need to make sure it's in the correct position, and it's in the little locks for the threshold. Okay, we've got the threshold in place. I'm going to turn the fans on, and then I'm going to close the door and turn the lights off. And as the fans are rotating, I can see that they're going in the counterclockwise position. Lights off. And we've closed our door. And the process has been complete.